My name is Luke Denman of the United States Army, and this is part one of the Staff Sergeant Walker Trio. I'm going to have to backtrack in time a little bit to tell you about the first time that I ever interacted with Staff Sergeant Walker. We had just been called up for this mobilization, and I had just come in from AIT. I volunteered to go, so they take a whole bunch of dudes that we don't know each other, we're not from the same unit, and they throw us all together for this like amalgamation of a deployment. And they call us Warrior Platoon 9, shout out. We bust down to Mississippi from Indianapolis, and we get there, we form up, we get our rigmarole of normal Army stuff, and we go in our bay. And when I get to my bunk, it's me, and then across the aisle is Staff Sergeant Walker, and then behind me is a young, wonderful man who I'll eventually tell another story about, named Staff Sergeant Westfall. And we have our duffel bags open, and we're loading them into our wall lockers. Nothing out of the ordinary. And I couldn't help but notice as I'm loading my items into the wall locker that Staff Sergeant Walker's duffel bag toppled over, and several items within his bag careened out into the floor. One of which was a massive, veiny dildo. It's the biggest fake penis I've ever even imagined in my mind. It's huge. It's so big that upon seeing it first out the corner of my eye, I thought that it was a Godzilla action figure. But I realized that it was not when I heard the snap of the sinew pull away from the cold concrete floor. And it came to me, and I was shocked, and I went back to my wall locker trying to pretend or imagine that this is not what had just taken place. And I'm running through all these scenarios in my mind like, no, it's not a dildo, he's an amputee, and it's an arm. It's his amputee arm. And as I'm thinking all these things, I turn around to get some things off of my bunk, and my bunkmate, Buck Sergeant Westfall, is looking at me like this. To which I can't help but respond by looking at him like this. And as we're locked eyes, keep in mind we're total strangers. We've never really spoken a word to each other. I motion at him like this. And he motions back. I turn back to my gear in horror, realizing that I didn't just invent the scenario that went down with the dildo in the bag, and I just kind of continue going about putting my things in my wall locker. But to my chagrin, behind me, I hear Sergeant Westfall say, "Hey, Staff Sergeant Walker, how are you doing this fine morning?" You know, Staff Sergeant Walker in his peppy attitude responds, "Well, I tell you what, Sergeant Westfall, everything's going great. Everything's going good today. How are you doing today, Buck Sergeant?" He responds that, everything's going fine. Staff Sergeant, I noticed that your duffel bag spilled over a moment ago into the floor. Did you get all those items that fell out of your bag? Did you get them all secured? Did you get them all back in your possession?
Well, as a matter of fact, Buck Sergeant, I did get those items secured. I appreciate your concern when it comes to all my things.
Sergeant Westfall, very gracefully, and he's a cool as a cucumber guy. He looks at him with a cold face and he says, "I couldn't help but notice that one of the items that spilled out of the duffel bag was a massive dildo."
No, Buck Sergeant. You're just a little bit confused there, Sergeant Westfall. That wasn't no dildo fell out of my bag.
At this point, Sergeant Westfall deems it necessary to say, "Oh, yes, it was, Sergeant Walker. Not only did I see the dildo fall out of your bag, but Private Denman saw it too." And again, my breath was just ripped out of my guts because I'm an E2 at the time. I'm fresh out of AIT. I'm not even really supposed to be talking to these guys. And I turned to Sergeant Westfall and he says, "Tell him what you saw, Private Denman." To which I responded, "Gentlemen, this conversation's way outside of my pay grade. Please continue it at your leisure. I didn't see anything." And at this point, Sergeant Westfall becomes frustrated and he says, "Staff Sergeant Wilder, why do you have a giant dildo in your bag? Why? We all saw it. Everybody saw it. Why do you have it?" And I'm under the personal persuasion that that you can put whatever you want in your rectum. This is America. You can put things in your butt if you want to. But let's be real for a minute. We're in an open bay with like 40 dudes. You're sleeping 5-6 feet from each other. We have open showers. You're standing there, dick swinging with 30 other dudes, dick swinging as well. The only option that's feasible is that he go into a porta-john and forcibly cram this iguana-sized dildo into his rectum while Private Joe Snuffy tries to utilize the latrine next to him. And after a endless assault upon Staff Sergeant Walker's integrity, he finally ends this whole debacle by saying,
"Well, there ain't nothing wrong with a grown man having a dildo in his bag."
To which we couldn't disagree. Stay tuned for part 2 of Staff Sergeant Walker.
Hey guys, Eli here. Hope you enjoyed the first episode of Drunken Debrief. We had a fucking blast making it. Also excited to announce we're launching the first shirt of our clothing brand. So check it out. Link will be somewhere in the description. Big shout out to Les Linger's Whiskey, Article 15 Clothing, and Black Rifle Coffee. Fucking got hammered off that shit. The whiskey, not the coffee. Coffee helped the next day when we were very, very hungover. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Like, subscribe, and share. Also, this is my way to give back to the veteran community. A place where we can just fucking laugh, tell stories, have a good time. Write in. I want to hear your stories. I'll probably fly you out if you have good ones and let you tell your stories. I think that covers everything. Stay tuned for more Drunken Debriefs and Military Minutes.